Okay, fantastic. Okay, I'll share my screen again. Great. Okay, so like I mentioned, people do all of these actions at the same time every year. So it's a real global community that are working on these cases. So you're really joining that global community of people who are acting for human rights when you participate in Right for Rights. And many cases have been very successful due to all of these actions and all of this attention on the cases. So for example, Nasima Al-Sada, a campaigner for women's rights in Saudi Arabia, was imprisoned in 2018 for peacefully defending human rights. And she had no access to her lawyer or her family members while she was in prison. But thanks to nearly 800,000 letters, tweets, and emails, Nasima walked free in June of this year, and she's now back with her family and friends. So that's just one example of how your words can really have impact and change lives. So today we're all here to learn and connect and collectively act for Mikita in particular, and also apply this learning to all the other cases for Right for Rights, where people are disappeared, harassed, and imprisoned unjustly. So in a minute, I'd like to welcome Tatiana, Belarus campaigner and the Eastern European Regional Campaigns Assistant, who'll join us to speak about the situation in Belarus and more particularly about Mikita's case and what we can do in this webinar and afterwards. And then we're delighted to have Hope and Louise here from the Wesley Amnesty group, who will speak about organising for Right for Rights in their secondary school, both before COVID and during COVID, and how they've changed their approaches and what's been working well and any new ideas that they have. So I imagine we'll get great tips for bringing back to our own schools and communities from Hope and Louise. And we'll recap on how to take action together this year with Amnesty Ireland on Right for Rights. And we can show Mikita our solidarity together in this webinar by adding to a virtual solidarity card, and also learn how to post on social media about Mikita's case as well. So I'm going to introduce you now to Tatiana, but first I wanted to just show you where Belarus is in the world. The capital is Minsk, and it borders Lithuania, Latvia, Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and it has a population of over 9 million, so a little bit larger than Ireland. And the president is Alexander Lukashenko, who's been in power since 1994. So now I'm going to stop sharing and introduce you, Tatiana. It's really, really great to have you today. We've been really looking forward to talking with you.
Thank you so much, Deidre. And thanks so much everyone for joining the webinar. I'm joining on my phone because of some connection problems, so occasionally I'll be glancing at my notes. So apologies if it doesn't seem like I'm staring at the camera, but I was just going to start with the same, just to highlight the fact that Belarus is the country situated in the middle of Europe, and since summer 2020, the worst human rights crisis in its modern history has been taking place. So today I'll tell you a little bit about the case of Mikita Zalatarou, who was imprisoned for 5 years after a shockingly unfair trial. And Amnesty's main call, just to highlight it from the start, is to release Nikita and give him a fair trial. But before I will tell you his tragic story, I just wanted to say a couple of words about Belarusian peaceful protests in 2020. On 9th of August 2020, the presidential elections took place in Belarus. But the persecutions, the repressions against various members of the opposition, activists had started well before the election, and the results of the election were widely disputed, even though the incumbent president, Alexander Lukashenko, claimed a landslide victory. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya emerged as a popular candidate for protest voters. And immediately after the election, hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets to protest peacefully against the results. And in response, authorities unleashed a very violent crackdown on peaceful protests and basically anyone expressing dissent. Riot police used unlawful force against peaceful protests, and tens of thousands were detained just for protesting peacefully. Allegations of torture and ill treatment in detention were widespread, but the perpetrators are still enjoying complete impunity. What it means is that they are not prosecuted for their actions in any way. Dozens of thousands of people were detained under administrative legislation, so they were imprisoned for short periods of time and fined with huge fines afterwards. And again, just for taking part in peaceful demonstrations, and thousands of those peaceful protesters and activists have been prosecuted under criminal charges related to mass events and protests. Hundreds have already been sentenced to long prison sentences, and those include human rights defenders, activists, and even children like Nikita. So returning to Nikita, on 10th of August, Nikita was waiting for a friend on the street in the town of Homel, and suddenly he was swept in a crowd of protesters, and somebody told him to run because people saw that the police was attacking. And so Nikita ran together with all the other protesters, even though according to media reports, the protests in Homel were overwhelmingly peaceful. Within 24 hours, this 16-year-old boy who has epilepsy found himself in police custody and accused of throwing a Molotov cocktail at the foot of two policemen. Officers beat and tortured Nikita and interrogated him without the presence of a responsible adult. So from the morning, from about 10:30 in the morning until the evening of that day, Nikita was held in police detention without access to a lawyer or a social worker or his parents. And when his mother finally saw him, that was 5 p.m. that day. This is, of course, a violation of Belarus's obligations under the Convention of the Rights of the Child and the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights. When Nikita finally saw his mother after police questioning, he told her that he had been beaten and he lost consciousness in her presence. The police officers then called for an ambulance. And when Nikita was in the hospital, he was brought to a local children's hospital. He told the doctors what happened to him and that the officers had beaten him in order to force him to give the password to his mobile phone. But nevertheless, he was returned back to police detention within hours. Article 37 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child states that the use of torture and other ill treatment to compel a child to confess or give other information is a grave violation of the child's rights. So any such admission or confession is inadmissible as evidence. What it means is that it is not allowed to use such confessions as any form of evidence in any circumstance under international law. Despite no evidence showing Nikita had been involved in any violence, he was convicted and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. And when the verdict was announced, Nikita threw himself against the bar, shouting, let me out of here." Just a few more details about his unfair trial. Nikita denied the allegation and refused to give testimony in court. He relied for that on his constitutional right not to bear witness against himself. Both Nikita and his father were asked to provide names of other potential perpetrators and then promised that if they provided names, Nikita could go free. His lawyer was forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and that was done in order to prevent the lawyer from revealing any details of the case, so that any kind of injustice could be done behind closed curtains and basically in the atmosphere of total impunity. And that happens with most cases associated with the peaceful protests after the 9th of August presidential elections in Belarus at the moment. And his father also reported that video evidence used to convict Nikita and showing individuals throwing Molotov cocktails did not identify Nikita. And so his lawyer appealed against the verdict on the basis that the court failed to prove Nikita's guilt. But tragically, the sentence was upheld during the appeal hearing in April 2021. The other information that we received recently, other bit of sad news, is that according to Nikita's father, a few months later, further 18 months were added to Nikita's sentence. The prosecution claimed that Nikita had allegedly attacked a prison guard. And we're now verifying what that means. What's the total number of years that Nikita has in prison ahead of him. So in a nutshell, if we talk about Belarus's approach to children's rights, it has been criticized for its failure to adequately protect children within the criminal justice system. And in 2020, the UN Committee for the Rights of the Child expressed concern that the punishing approach used towards children in the criminal justice system basically is used in Belarus, and that there is the lack of a restorative child justice system and inappropriate condition of detention, and that includes lack of access to education and healthcare. And so with this in mind, Amnesty International is very concerned that Nikita did not have a fair trial and that the Belarusian authorities have failed to protect his rights in accordance with the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And why your actions in the Right for Rights are important. That's Nikita's story in a nutshell. Obviously, it can, there are lots more details that can be included, for example, about Nikita's story and his interest. We have limited information about what his life is like in prison, but we do know that before being imprisoned, he really liked BMX and playing computer games. I'm terrible with computer games, but there is some information on the Right for Rights postcards about this as well. And he just led a life of an ordinary teenager, like most other, going to school and hanging out with friends. And so why is it important that you take action? And what you can do is, first of all, you can write messages of solidarity to Mikita, and you can also post about his case on social media. At the moment, we do not know how many messages and whether Mikita is allowed to receive all of his solidarity messages in prison. However, in any case, even if some of the messages or the messages currently do not reach Mikita, what we do know is that any kind of solidarity action sends the message to Belarusian authorities, and that is also incredibly important. And the message is that the world is watching, and that the world is horrified about this injustice, and it is concerned. The international community, people from all over the world, are concerned about Nikita's well-being. And working in Belarus for a number of years and working on the region for a number of years, I can see that this international solidarity has been effective in the past in the cases of other young people, teenagers, and prisoners that were greatly supported by the solidarity. And the prison authorities also do take notice of this floods of international attention that are suddenly received by some of the prisoners that are unjustly detained. And of course, spreading the word about Mikita's case on social media and encouraging other people in your social networks to take action is also greatly appreciated, because what makes the Right for Right campaign truly global is the fact that people from all over the world, as Deidre was saying, 800,000 people, millions of people are taking action from all corners of the world. And that is just the most powerful and effective thing about it. And that's what Amnesty originally and still stands for. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Tatiana, for giving us some more insight there, and I suppose for understanding all of the rights that have been taken away from Mikita, both as a child and as a human being, the right to a fair trial, the right not to be tortured, the right to be treated as a child should be, and have adult representation and be in the appropriate environment. So that's what we're all fighting for and demanding. And it's good to know that making lots of noise on social media and sending lots of letters will be noticed by the Belarusian authorities, and that this sort of pressure has worked in the past for other young people in Belarus in unfortunately similar situations. So it's really good to get that insight and to kind of learn a little bit about Mikita as a person as well, you know, that he was into BMXing and rap music, and I believe Minecraft is the type of gaming that he loved. Yeah, this is what we learned about when we were reading about his case, and we can share all the information in the chat box here as well. And our solidarity card in a little while will focus on a Minecraft theme, so hopefully it might get to him. But we have a question here in the questions and answers from someone attending asking, was Nikita trialed as an adult or as a child? If you know, Tatiana.
That's a very, very good question, because let me just check. I'm pretty sure that currently he's held in the juvenile colony. But however, as we saw, a lot of his rights as a child were violated, and the unfair trial that took place that specifically did not include any of the recommendations, any of the obligations of Belarus under international law that are appropriate for the rights, for the fair trial of a child. Okay. So probably there are kind of two approaches, you know, what the Belarusian authorities would, how they would answer this question, and what the international law and human rights would say. And we clearly think that it was an unfair trial, and a lot of Nikita's rights as a child were gravely violated, including one of the most grave ones is the right not to be tortured and not to be ill-treated. He survived.
Yeah, that's a terribly grave injustice to Mikita. So it very much seems like he didn't have, you know, the rights in place or the supports in place that a child should have if they're to be trialed in this situation. But thank you so much for that question. Really, really good question. So I think that, I know I feel now much better informed to kind of write my own letter to the Belarusian authorities and to start acting on this case. And I'm sure other people do here as well. So thank you so much, Tatiana, for that, telling us more about the situation in Belarus. I suppose the wider situation about people not having the right to protest peacefully, which is a right that we enjoy very much in Ireland. And I imagine a lot of young people joining here and logging in from schools around the country have been protesting on climate marches and climate strikes and on different issues. So it's a right that we really exercise in Ireland, and we really, I feel very grateful that I can exercise that. So that's another wider issue in Belarus that that Amnesty are also working on as well. So thank you so much for that, Tatiana. And we might have time for more discussion or questions at the end. But for now, I'm going to introduce Hope and Louise from the Wesley College Amnesty School Group, who are going to tell us a little bit about how they're acting and organising for Right for Rights this year, including on Mikita's case as well.
Hi, I'm Louise. I joined Wesley's Amnesty group in my first year, so 2016. I won't lie, Amnesty was obviously more exciting in terms of Right for Rights activities and other Amnesty-related activities we did before COVID than since it started before COVID hit. We did a lot more physical petitions and campaigns than after COVID hit, where we'd only do things online. We had an evident difference in the amount of physical displays before COVID, and we could also physically talk in front of whole school assemblies rather than put up a video or a newsletter. We have a couple popular annual campaigns we like to do, and luckily we could do those this year, such as the first year treasure hunt, where first years get put in 2s or 3s and are given a sheet with a description of an article and a space to write a letter beside each description. Sheets with the numbers of the articles and letters were put around the school in similar places. The numbers of the article correspond to the letter to spell out something at the end, and it's always been a really popular campaign that we've done because it invites new first years to come join the club. Pre-COVID, we have a bunch of powerful campaigns. We obviously always held an assembly adding information to each campaign we did. We put petition sheets on the tables in the concourse, which is an area you have to walk through to get to the canteen at lunchtimes. This often caused crowds, so more people ended up signing the sheets. We also did this for petitions for the Amazon rainforest, but we included bake sales to simultaneously raise money for a charity which helped the rainforest. We also organized a 24-hour fast, silence, phone ban, or all three at one point to raise awareness. This helped with communicating with the student families, since most, or more like some, continued the challenge at home. We kidnapped Mr. Mackey, the chaplain of the church, and one of the religion teachers at the school, during an assembly. He represented a human rights activist. The reasoning we had behind kidnapping him was because he was protesting the right to wear white socks, since the people who wear trousers at the school should be wearing navy or black socks. Once we also put up a cardboard wall blocking the entrance to one of the school's main buildings, which really annoyed a lot of the school's body, but also raised a lot of awareness to the struggle for refugees getting into certain countries. People ended up ramming into the cardboard and breaking it down, which kind of ruined the point, but it was there. Another campaign that got slightly ruined during the Brave campaign, where we put up posters around the school that said #Brave, but then people started taking down the bead and said #Brave everywhere, so that wasn't particularly the best. Big obvious displays clearly worked the best. Kidnapping Mr. Mackey was fun. The cardboard wall at the building's entrance was obvious and caught people's attention. A petition placed in the concourse caused obvious crowds there for a large amount of signatures, and the 24-hour fast, silence, or no phone excited people. Since COVID started, we have gone from bigger and more noticeable activities to frequent emails and videos for online assemblies. Since the schools have reopened, we have started doing more visible campaigns again. We might start recycling old campaigns to show the newer students that weren't there to see them originally.
Hi, my name is Hope, and I joined Wesley's Amnesty group in 4th year. So the only campaigns that I have ever known is running them and working around COVID with them. So before COVID, as Louise mentioned, we would have petitions for students to sign and assemblies explaining the individual cases for the Right for Rights campaign. But obviously it's very difficult to have these petitions where loads of people will be crowding around a table, and also it's very difficult to kidnap someone and also stay socially distant from them. So to kind of combat this and to get at least something out, we set up an Amnesty email link and sent out newsletters every single week. In terms of Right for Rights, each week we talked about a particular member of a person on the campaign. We also set up petitions, but at the time we had to have someone sitting there all the time and had to encourage everyone to bring their own pens, and we had to ensure everyone was social distance. As well as this, we could only, instead of doing multiple assemblies, we could only do one through a video, and it was quite challenging to try and find a time in the virtual assembly to do it, and also to show the teachers how to put the video up on the assembly. Because of all this, when we normally would have got a huge amount of interaction and got nearly every student and member of staff's signatures on petitions, we maybe only got half of that, and the general interest in the campaign was a lot lower. To try and get more people's attention to the campaign, we set up an Instagram to spread out more about the campaign, and we're also at the moment looking more into doing physical displays again, but obviously that comes with the challenge of making sure not everyone is crowding around this display. We're trying to do more physical displays. We're trying to get back into doing assemblies where we're actually talking to people instead of a video. And we're also trying to do more petitions in person, trying to break that reliance on technology, because a lot of people have become kind of sick of it. So yeah, that's it. I'm finished.
Is there questions?
Yeah, if there's any questions.
Yes, if anyone wants to ask a question from any of the other schools here, please do. It was really great to hear about Right for Rights over the years in Wesley College. It kind of makes me want to be a student again and back in school and doing stuff like this. And well done to your chaplain for allowing you guys to kidnap him. He's great for letting that happen. I really love the idea of the wall of cardboard. Is something that's very visual and emotive, kind of representing borders. So that sort of artivism or kind of creative activism can often be very powerful. And then how you've moved to move to online through the newsletters and the e-bulletins, which is an awful lot of work, but I think that people would really appreciate that kind of regular update and focusing on a different case each week, because there's a human being, there's a life, there's a family, there's a group of people, there's an extended community behind each of these cases. So kind of taking the time to really find out the story behind each of these cases, I think is really worthwhile. And really well done on that. And yeah, working through Instagram now and Instagram Live and stories and all the possibilities there, I think, is brilliant. And if there's anything that can happen offline and in person in a safe way as well, I'm sure all the schools here will be trying to do that too. So thank you so much for all those ideas, Hope and Louise. And please do stay on the call. And I can see that Tala has shared some links here. So there's a link here in organising activities for Right for Rights, where you can download the pack and how to organise everything this year, and for signing the petition online. So we are recommending that perhaps people sign, there's a sign all where you can sign all the petitions at the same time on our website. And then if you're organising activities, perhaps to focus on letter writing or writing solidarity cards as well. And if you're a young person joining here today from one of the schools, then we do have a WhatsApp opportunity where you can send me an email and I'll show you how to participate. But it's a broadcast WhatsApp group where I would send out messages to everyone on the group, but they can't see each other, for opportunities to take action and be involved a little bit more deeply in youth activism with Amnesty Ireland. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen and just recap on the different ways we can take action. And while I'm doing that, Tala, if you might share the link to the solidarity card for Mikita in the chat box so people can start adding to that now. And if you could share the link to the Google form as well. So we really want to improve all of these webinars and events that we're doing virtually. So it'd be fantastic to get your feedback in this Google form near the end of this webinar. And it'll just take 2 minutes and we'll really take the learnings and insights on board for the next time we have a webinar. I'm just going to recap now on what we can do together for Right for Rights this year. Yeah, so raising awareness is really key. So having at least one conversation with a friend or family member is the start, or a classmate or teacher, and then working out from there into your classrooms and communities about Mikita's case. And if you're interested in the other cases as well, and Right for Rights more generally, we really hope you'll go online to Amnesty Ireland's website and by following the link in the chat box to sign all the petitions online. And please do at home or gather in groups where it's safe to do so. Write letters to those in power, including to the Belarusian authorities. And in the letter writing kit that you can download from our website, it gives you the salutation and, a sample letter of the wording of a letter to the Belarusian authorities as well. So you don't have to create it yourself. But after learning more about Mikita's case today, we hope that you might add a few of your own words as well, because they often have the most impact. And then after Christmas or just before Christmas, please do post any physical letters or solidarity cards to the Amnesty offices. And then we're going to send them all together at the same time by registered post to make sure they get to their destination in Belarus. And please do act on social media as well and tag Amnesty Ireland and include the Right for Rights hashtag. And if you tag us, we'll be sure to reshare and to try and increase the reach and the impact on social media. And please do show your solidarity for Mikita now in the virtual card. So I can see that the card is there. I'm just going to open it up here as well. So myself and one of my colleagues have already added a couple of messages based on Minecraft, and I can see that there's a few more being added straight away. And I imagine that perhaps some of you here might play Minecraft. You might have younger siblings that play Minecraft. So it's all about creating worlds that represent freedom for Mikita, because obviously he can't enjoy his freedom at the moment. To give him hope and know that people around the world know a little bit about him and they care about him and they're demanding his release, and for him to have a fair trial that is his right. So please do add to that, and then in a few days we'll endeavour to try and get that to Mikita. And yes, let me see where we are. Yeah, and this is Mikita here. He actually looks like he might be playing Minecraft in this photo, I imagine. But this is the suggested social media message, and I think that Tala is going to put this in the chat as well, if it's not there already, so you can copy and paste. But it's on your own accounts or on school accounts, asking for Mikita's release, demanding his fair trial and fair treatment, that it's the right of every child, and to also send your solidarity to Mikita and let the Belarusian authorities know that you know about his case, that you're watching his case, and you're not going to forget about it. And there's the tags there for Facebook and Twitter for Belarusian authorities as well, and also for Amnesty Ireland. And you can also show Mikita you're with him by adding to this virtual solidarity card. And if you wanted to create your own Minecraft world and print it out and post it to our office as well, so printed image, we can send that on to him too. And we have the address for the educational colony prison where he is currently residing. So we have just a couple of more minutes left. I'm just going to have a little look. That's so lovely to see some extra messages. Please do keep adding them. And in the last webinar, a few were added after the webinar, which is fantastic. So we waited until a few more people had time to add them online there. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if perhaps there might be any other questions. But if not, I'm just wondering, Tatiana, if you have any insights currently to how Belarusian authorities might react to kind of global pressure through a campaign like Right for Rights at the moment. I know you mentioned that there's been some successes in the past when there's been a global focus on a case. Do you have any examples of maybe where this has helped with cases, or in particular of cases of young people whose human rights are violated in any way?
Thanks very much. It's again a very important point for discussion, because at the moment the situation in Belarus is so volatile and completely unpredictable that it's very difficult to know how the Belarusian authorities will react to the messages of solidarity and whether the conditions for Mikita would improve drastically, sadly, just because we're in the middle. Belarus and is in the middle of the worst human rights crisis in its modern history, and basically there is even the term in Russian and Belarusian, it would be translated into English as complete and total rights collapse or legal collapse. So highlighting that there is basically no more fair systems in place that could protect people, organizations and defenders, and lots of organizations were forced to shut down. However, in the past, in 2019, there was another young, a child basically, who was imprisoned, and he was imprisoned for a non-violent drug offense. And that is the law and the issue of what we call children 3 to 8. Amnesty and human rights defenders in Belarus And there are thousands of, according to human rights defenders, there are thousands of young people languishing in Belarusian prisons, children and young people for minor non-violent drug offenses. And this teenager was originally sentenced for 10 years. But during all the global campaigning, including the Rights for Rights, it's very difficult to always split, because the campaigning started before and then Right for Rights joined, whether it was only the Right for Rights or just all the global campaigning that mattered. But his term was shortened to 6 years, and his prison conditions were changed drastically overnight, almost, because previously he wasn't allowed to have his asthma medication with him. He was, even though he was asthmatic, he was expected to do very dangerous work for his lungs, and he was basically held in very difficult conditions, not allowed to read, not allowed to study. And we saw the improvements almost immediately after the beginning of the Right for Rights, and he was able to receive messages of solidarity. They meant a world to him, and also to a lot of other fellow prisoners, because his family were telling me that some of the other boys in colony asked for, because there were so many solidarity cards, to keep 1 or 2 cards under their pillow or by their bed. And that was kind of the beacon of hope, that the world hasn't forgotten about those young people languishing in prison for those articles 3 to 8. And recently we saw the improvement, and then one other child 3 to 8 on whom we campaigned, not for the Right for Rights, but generally as Amnesty. He was released after also surviving torture and after being held in solitary confinement for a long time. He was completely freed, and that obviously came partially as a result of international pressure and campaigning.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. It's it's heartening to hear that like international pressure and global campaigning can at the very least improve conditions, for people who are unjustly imprisoned or imprisoned without a fair trial. And secondly, maybe even result in eventually their release or their early release as well. So it's good to hear about the precedent, and it's very motivating actually to hear about that as well. So I'm looking forward to taking action on the case myself and supporting others to do so. And thank you so much for joining us again. And I know some people have had to jump off the call already, but thank you to everyone who joined us here today in this virtual space. And we're really looking forward to seeing letters and emails and tweets and posts and solidarity cards, and we'll make sure to get those to Belarus as well. So thank you everybody, and have a really lovely afternoon. It's lovely to chat. Bye.
Thanks, Deirdre.
Thanks. Thanks, Tala. Thanks, Hope and Louise. Thanks, Emma.
That's great. Cheers.
Bye.